The old wooden floorboard creaked under Connor Matthews' boots as he descended into his grandfather's basement for the final time. 3 months had passed since the funeral, and the bank's foreclosure notice gave him just 2 weeks to clear out the family home. Hunter, his loyal German shepherd, padded silently beside him, amber eyes scanning the dusty corners with military precision. Behind a stack of forgotten Christmas decorations, Connor's flashlight beam caught something unusual wedged between 2 foundation stones. His calloused fingers worked the aged leather free, revealing a hand-drawn map marked with symbols he'd never seen before. The parchment felt ancient, brittle at the edges, and depicted a route through Utah's remote mountain wilderness, leading to what appeared to be a medieval castle. Hunter's ears perked forward, and he whined softly as an unfamiliar scent drifted from the map, his tail rigid with alert intensity. The drawing showed intricate detail that suggested first-hand knowledge of the terrain, with elevation markers, water sources, and geological features marked with surveyor's precision. Most intriguing was the castle itself, rendered with architectural accuracy that implied the artist had actually visited the location rather than relying on imagination or second-hand descriptions. Please support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Connor Matthews had never been the type to chase fairy tales, but military service changes a man's perspective on what's possible. At 42, the former Army Rangers sergeant carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd survived 3 combat deployments in hostile territory. His weathered hands bore the scars of improvised explosive devices and enemy fire, while his steel-gray eyes held the weight of decisions made in life or death moments. The transition from active duty to civilian life had been challenging, filled with sleepless nights and hypervigilance that made normal social interactions difficult. Hunter had been his constant companion for the past 6 years, initially assigned as his military working dog during their final deployment together. The bond forged between them went far beyond typical pet ownership, built on mutual trust and shared experiences that only fellow veterans could truly understand. Hunter had saved Connor's life twice in Afghanistan, once by detecting a roadside bomb seconds before detonation, and again by dragging his unconscious body to safety after a mortar attack left him bleeding in hostile territory. When Connor's discharge papers came through, adopting Hunter wasn't a question but a necessity. They were a team, bound by instincts honed in combat, and an understanding that transcended words. The German shepherd's intelligence bordered on supernatural, his ability to read Connor's moods and anticipate danger, uncanny even by military standards. Together, they'd return to Utah, hoping civilian life would offer the peace that seemed impossible to find in crowded cities or veteran support groups, filled with well-meaning strangers who couldn't comprehend their shared experiences in war zones. The small ranch Connor inherited from his grandfather sat on 40 acres of high desert country, beautiful but barely profitable in good years. Rolling hills covered in sagebrush stretched toward distant mountain peaks, creating vistas that reminded him why he had fallen in love with this land as a child. Since his wife Sarah's death in a car accident 18 months ago, keeping up with mortgage payments had become impossible on his disability pension alone. Medical bills from her final hospital stay had drained their savings, and the part-time security work had found barely covered utilities and Hunter's veterinary care. The foreclosure notice felt like the final insult after everything they'd sacrificed for their country, another loss in a series of defeats that seemed to define his post-military existence. Connor had been prepared to pack their few belongings and find some small apartment in town where they could start over, but this mysterious map changed everything. His grandfather had been a quiet man who rarely spoke of his past, mentioning only that had traveled extensively in his youth before settling down to raise cattle. Family stories suggested had worked in mining or surveying, occupations that would explain his apparent cartographic skills. The basement contained other evidence of his grandfather's mysterious background, surveying equipment, geological samples, and photographs of locations that didn't match Utah's familiar landscapes. The map's intricate details suggested professional cartography, not some amateur treasure hunt drawing. Mountain peaks were marked with precise elevation markers, water sources indicated with careful notation, and the castle itself drawn with architectural accuracy that implied first-hand knowledge. Hunter circled the basement repeatedly, returning to sniff the map with increasing agitation, his behavior reminiscent of when had detected explosive materials during their service days. Professor Samuel Williams answered his office phone on the third ring, his voice carrying the cultured accent of someone who'd spent decades in academic circles. Connor had found the University of Utah historian's contact information through a simple internet search for local experts in regional history. When Connor described the map's appearance and mentioned its apparent age, Professor Williams' interest became immediately apparent, his questions growing more detailed and excited with each response. They arranged to meet that afternoon at the professor's cluttered office in the university's history department. Samuel Williams appeared to be in his 60s, with silver hair, wire-rimmed spectacles, and the soft build of someone more comfortable with books than physical activity. His office walls were lined with maps, historical photographs, and framed degrees from prestigious universities, creating an atmosphere of scholarly authority that immediately put Connor at ease. When Connor produced the leather map case, Williams handled it with the reverence typically reserved for religious artifacts, his hands trembling slightly with excitement. His examination was thorough and professional, using magnifying glasses and reference books to compare symbols and markings against known historical documents. After nearly an hour of study, Williams leaned back in his chair with obvious excitement, explaining that the map appeared authentic, possibly dating to the late 1800s or early 1900s. The parchment's composition and ink analysis suggested age-appropriate materials, while the artistic style matched surveying techniques from that historical period. Most intriguingly, the castle symbol depicted an area of Utah's Wasatch Range that remained largely unexplored by modern archaeologists, a region known for unusual geological formations that could conceivably hide man-made structures. Williams proposed a partnership, his expertise and academic resources in exchange for participation in whatever expedition Connor might organize. The professor's enthusiasm was infectious, and his offer to provide camping equipment and supplies addressed Connor's immediate financial constraints, while promising potential academic recognition that could benefit both their careers. Connor woke before dawn on departure morning, his internal military clock as reliable as any alarm system. Hunter was already alert, sitting by the front door with the patient intensity that had made him legendary among their former unit members. The German shepherd seemed to understand that today marked the beginning of something significant, his dark eyes tracking Connor's every movement as they loaded the truck with camping gear, climbing equipment, and emergency supplies. Professor Williams had arrived the previous evening with enough provisions for a week-long expedition, including professional-grade GPS units, geological survey maps, and camping equipment that clearly indicated serious financial investment in their venture. The partnership felt natural despite their different backgrounds, united by shared curiosity about the map's mysterious origins and potential discoveries ahead. The drive into Utah's remote mountain country took 3 hours on increasingly narrow roads, the asphalt eventually giving way to gravel, then dirt tracks barely wide enough for their vehicle. The landscape transformed from high desert scrubland to dense pine forests as they climbed toward the coordinates marked on the ancient map. Connor felt the familiar tension of approaching unknown territory, his military training automatically cataloging potential threats and escape routes while appreciating the natural beauty surrounding them. Hunter rode in the passenger seat with his head out the window, sampling scents carried on the mountain air with obvious excitement, his tail wagging with anticipation that suggested he understood their mission's importance. The final 5 miles required four-wheel drive as they navigated steep switchbacks and creek crossings that tested both their vehicle and Connor's driving skills. When they finally reached the trailhead indicated on the map, the silence was absolute except for wind through pine branches and distant bird calls that created an almost cathedral-like atmosphere of natural reverence. Ranger Emily Rodriguez intercepted them just as Connor finished securing their gear for the hike ahead, her approach professional but friendly despite the remote location, making their encounter seem almost coincidental. Her Park Service uniform was crisp despite obvious recent activity in rough terrain, and she carried herself with the confident movements of someone equally comfortable in wilderness environments and administrative offices. Emily appeared to be in her early 30s, with the lean build and alert expression that suggested extensive outdoor experience, combined with formal training in emergency response and visitor safety. She introduced herself as the district ranger responsible for this section of the Wasatch Range, explaining that she'd noticed their vehicle on her routine patrol and wanted to ensure they were properly prepared for backcountry conditions that could become dangerous without proper precautions. Her questions followed standard protocol, covering their planned route, expected return date, emergency contact information, and equipment inventory, but Connor noticed her attention lingering on their gear, with the evaluating gaze of someone frequently involved in search and rescue operations. Professor Williams responded to her inquiries with academic enthusiasm, mentioning their historical research mission without revealing specific details about the ancient map or their ultimate destination. When Connor mentioned their destination's general area without providing coordinates, Emily's expression grew visibly concerned, her professional demeanor shifting toward genuine worry about their safety. She warned them about increasing reports of unusual activity in that region over the past several weeks, including unauthorized camping that violated park regulations, heavy equipment sounds that suggested illegal construction or mining operations, and helicopter flights that didn't correspond to any permitted activities in the area. Several experienced hikers had reported feeling watched while camping in supposedly isolated areas, and one family had abandoned their planned backpacking trip after discovering fresh vehicle tracks in terrain that should have been accessible only on foot. Emily's warnings carried the weight of professional experience dealing with dangerous situations in remote wilderness areas, and she strongly recommended they consider postponing their expedition until Park Service investigators could determine the source of these mysterious activities that seemed to be escalating in frequency and boldness. The trail into Utah's wilderness proved more challenging than Connor's military experience had prepared him for, despite years of mountain warfare training in similar terrain across multiple deployment zones. The elevation gain was constant and steep, requiring frequent rest stops that allowed them to appreciate the dramatic landscape unfolding around their ascent. Hunter ranged ahead with the disciplined movement patterns had learned during their service deployments, periodically returning to report through subtle body language that Connor had learned to interpret like a sophisticated communication system. The German Shepherd's behavior indicated caution, but not immediate danger, his professional assessment of their surroundings providing valuable intelligence about potential threats or obstacles ahead. Professor Williams struggled with the altitude and physical demands, despite his obvious enthusiasm for their expedition, his academic lifestyle having provided little preparation for the cardiovascular challenges of high-altitude hiking with heavy packs. The frequent rest stops he required allowed Connor to study their surroundings more carefully, his military training automatically cataloging details that might prove significant later. Fresh tire tracks scarred sections of what should have been pristine wilderness, indicating heavy vehicles had recently accessed areas supposedly reachable only through difficult hiking trails. The tracks were wide and deep, suggesting construction or mining equipment rather than typical all-terrain vehicles used by hunters or recreational adventurers exploring the backcountry. Connor's military instincts cataloged these details automatically, his training and threat assessment triggering low-level alarm signals that he couldn't rationally explain, but had learned never to ignore during combat operations. The tracks followed no established trail system, instead cutting directly through fragile alpine vegetation in patterns that suggested hurried movement, rather than careful environmental stewardship expected in protected wilderness areas. Hunter's behavior became increasingly agitated as they climbed higher, his usual relaxed patrol pattern replaced by tense alertness more appropriate for hostile territory where enemy contact was possible. The German Shepherd frequently stopped to test the air with deep, analytical sniffs, his hackles occasionally rising in response to scents beyond human detection that clearly troubled his sophisticated sensory systems. Hunter's behavior changed dramatically as they approached the coordinates marked on their ancient map, transforming from his usual confident patrol pattern into something resembling his wartime alert status reserved for maximum threat conditions. The German Shepherd's ears remained perpetually forward, scanning for sounds beyond human perception, while his movements became carefully controlled and deliberately silent in the manner Connor recognized from their most dangerous combat missions. Without warning or apparent provocation, Hunter abandoned the trail marked on their ancient map, instead heading northeast through dense underbrush toward terrain that appeared nearly impassable to human travelers without specialized climbing equipment. Connor's attempts to redirect him toward their planned route proved completely futile. The dog clearly sensed something requiring immediate investigation despite the absence of obvious threats that human senses could detect. Professor Williams protested the deviation from their carefully planned route, concerned about losing daylight and the additional physical challenges of unmarked terrain. But Connor's trust in Hunter's instincts had been forged through life-threatening situations where the dog's judgment consistently proved superior to human analysis. They followed Hunter's lead through increasingly difficult terrain, climbing over fallen logs and navigating around massive boulders that seemed almost deliberately placed to discourage casual exploration of the area beyond. The forest grew darker as afternoon clouds gathered overhead, creating an atmosphere of impending weather that added urgency to their mission while reducing visibility that made navigation more challenging. Hunter periodically paused to ensure his human companions remained close, his protective instincts clearly engaged despite the absence of visible dangers that would explain his obvious concern for their safety. As they crested a ridge that hadn't appeared on any of their modern topographical maps, Hunter suddenly froze in perfect attention stance, his entire body rigid with focused intensity that Connor recognized as his highest alert level. Connor dropped to combat crouch automatically, hand moving toward the sidearm had carried since leaving military service, his body responding to Hunter's signals with conditioned reflexes developed through countless dangerous encounters overseas. The castle materializing through the forest defied rational explanation, its weathered stone walls and Gothic towers appearing completely incongruous against the Utah mountain landscape that surrounded it like a medieval vision transported through time and space. Connor's military training automatically assessed the structure's defensive capabilities while Professor Williams stared in academic amazement at architecture that simply shouldn't exist in North America, according to everything he knew about regional history. The fortress appeared authentically medieval, complete with crenellated battlements, narrow arrow slits designed for defensive archery, and a massive gatehouse that suggested serious defensive intentions by whoever had constructed this impossible structure. However, modern elements disrupted the historical illusion in ways that immediately caught Connor's attention. Electrical cables ran along the ancient walls in professionally installed conduits. Bright work lights illuminated sections of the courtyard with contemporary efficiency, and the steady hum of industrial generators indicated sophisticated power systems supporting ongoing operations. Hunter remained motionless in his highest alert stance, every muscle tensed as though preparing for immediate combat action, his sensitive hearing clearly detecting activities and conversations beyond human perception that warranted his obvious concern. Through military-grade binoculars, Connor observed people moving within the castle grounds with organized purpose, their movements coordinated and professional rather than the casual exploration expected from tourists or amateur historians. Heavy equipment sat parked near what appeared to be systematic excavation sites, while canvas tarps covered mysterious objects that suggested ongoing archaeological work of significant scope and sophistication. The scale of the operation was impressive, requiring substantial financial resources and logistical coordination that implied professional organization rather than amateur treasure hunting or academic research conducted with university budgets. Professor Williams whispered excitedly about the historical implications, speculating about European settlers or religious groups who might have constructed such an elaborate fortress in this remote location during periods of American expansion westward. However, Connor's military experience and threat assessment training recognized signs of secretive activity that suggested contemporary criminal enterprise rather than legitimate historical research protected by proper permits and academic oversight. Infiltrating the castle required every tactical skill Connor had learned during his Army Rangers training, combined with Hunter's supernatural ability to move silently through hostile territory. They waited until sunset provided natural concealment before approaching the ancient walls, using shadows cast by the Gothic towers to mask their movement across open ground. The castle's medieval design included blind spots that modern security hadn't adequately addressed, allowing them to reach the outer walls without detection by the armed guards patrolling the courtyard with professional weapons and communication equipment. Hunter's ears constantly swiveled towards sounds beyond human perception, his body language indicating multiple personnel inside the structure along with mechanical activity that suggested ongoing excavation work. Connor's military experience recognized the operational patterns of well-funded criminal enterprises, rather than legitimate archaeological research, confirmed by the absence of proper academic documentation or government permits that should accompany such extensive historical work. Through gaps in the ancient stonework, Connor observed sophisticated equipment including ground-penetrating radar, precision excavation tools, and climate-controlled storage containers designed for transporting delicate artifacts without environmental damage. The scale of the operation impressed even someone familiar with military logistics, requiring coordination between multiple specialists and substantial financial backing from sources with serious criminal resources. Professor Williams remained hidden in the forest while Connor and Hunter conducted their reconnaissance, his academic excitement tempered by growing concern about the obviously illegal nature of whatever activities were occurring within the medieval fortress walls. The discovery of priceless artifacts being systematically removed from their historical context represented a cultural crime of international significance, potentially involving stolen treasures black markets that catered to wealthy private collectors. Hunter's agitation increased as they moved closer to the main excavation site, his sensitive nose-detecting sense associated with explosives, firearms, and human stress that suggested the operation involved serious criminal activity, rather than scholarly research. Connor's infiltration revealed a sophisticated antiquities theft operation centered around a previously unknown chamber beneath the castle's main hall that contained artifacts spanning multiple historical periods. The underground excavation had been carefully concealed from aerial surveillance, with workers entering through natural cave systems that connected to the castle's foundation, rather than obvious surface entrances that might attract attention from Park Service patrols or satellite imagery. Inside the hidden chamber, Connor discovered carefully catalogued artifacts including medieval weapons, religious relics, precious metals, and documents that appeared to be historically significant manuscripts, preserved in climate-controlled cases. The professional organization of the theft impressed even someone familiar with military precision, with each artifact photographed, numbered, and prepared for shipment through networks that clearly had international reach and sophisticated distribution capabilities. Dr. Sophia Blackwood moved through the operation with obvious authority, directing workers with the confidence of someone accustomed to managing complex criminal enterprises, rather than academic research projects. Her expensive clothing and professional demeanor suggested education and social connections that provided cover for illegal activities, while her interaction with armed security personnel indicated experience dealing with dangerous situations. Connor remained concealed while observing the operation's scope, realizing they discovered something requiring immediate law enforcement intervention, rather than amateur investigation by a veteran and academic historian. The theft of cultural heritage artifacts represented federal crimes carrying severe penalties, while the armed security in remote locations suggested the criminals were prepared to use violence against anyone threatening their operation. Hunter remained perfectly still beside Connor, his military training suppressing natural protective instincts in favor of tactical patience that had saved their lives during multiple combat deployments overseas. The German Shepherd's body language indicated extreme alertness without revealing their position to the criminal organization that clearly had resources and motivation to eliminate witnesses to their illegal activities. The first direct encounter with Dr. Sophia Blackwood occurred when Connor attempted to document the criminal operation with photographs that could serve as evidence for law enforcement agencies responsible for cultural crimes. His movement triggered motion sensors that immediately alerted security personnel to unauthorized presence within the castle grounds, forcing him and Hunter to abandon stealth in favor of rapid movement toward defensive positions among the ancient stonework. Dr. Blackwood emerged from the excavation site with professional composure, her appearance more suited to university faculty meetings than criminal enterprises operating in remote wilderness locations. She addressed Connor with cultured politeness that masked obvious intelligence assessment, her questions designed to determine whether he represented law enforcement threat or simply curious adventurer, who could be managed through intimidation or elimination. Her accent suggested European education and international experience, while her immediate access to armed security indicated preparation for exactly this type of unwanted discovery by outsiders who might threaten their operation. Connor's military training recognized interrogation techniques, designed to gather intelligence about potential threats while projecting authority, intended to discourage resistance or escape attempts. Professor Williams chose this moment to emerge from the forest despite Connor's explicit instructions to remain hidden, his academic curiosity overriding practical concerns about personal safety when confronted with historical discoveries of unprecedented significance. His appearance complicated the tactical situation by providing additional hostages that limited Connor's options for immediate escape, while increasing the stakes for everyone involved in the confrontation. The revelation of Professor Samuel Williams' betrayal struck Connor like physical violence, shattering trust that had developed during their partnership and forcing immediate reassessment of everything that had led them to this dangerous confrontation. Samuel emerged from behind Dr. Blackwood with obvious embarrassment, his academic demeanor unable to conceal guilt about the deception that had delivered Connor directly into criminal hands through carefully orchestrated manipulation. His explanation revealed months of collaboration with the antiquities theft ring, providing historical expertise in exchange for access to artifacts that legitimate archaeology would never have permitted him to study or publish. Samuel's financial difficulties and academic ambitions had made him vulnerable to recruitment by criminals who recognized his expertise value, while exploiting his professional frustrations with university bureaucracy that limited his research opportunities. Connor realized that their entire expedition had been orchestrated to provide cover for the theft operation, with his military experience and outdoor skills serving purposes he'd never intended while placing Hunter and himself in mortal danger. Samuel's attempts at justification fell flat against the reality of armed criminals prepared to commit violence against anyone threatening their multimillion-dollar operation that violated both federal and international laws governing cultural heritage protection. Dr. Blackwood's patience with the emotional reunion was limited, her criminal experience recognizing the tactical disadvantage created by additional witnesses, who possessed detailed knowledge about their operation's location, scope, and personnel. The remote location that had initially seemed perfect for concealing criminal activity now became a liability, providing complete isolation for eliminating problems without risk of discovery by law enforcement agencies or civilian witnesses. Hunter's continued alertness suggested additional threats beyond the immediate confrontation, his sensitive hearing detecting activities that implied the criminal organization was larger and better prepared than the visible personnel suggested to Connor's tactical assessment. Connor's discovery of the international scope of the antiquities theft operation revealed criminal networks extending far beyond simple treasure hunting, involving sophisticated smuggling routes that connected American archaeological sites with wealthy collectors worldwide. Documentation found during his brief access to the excavation records showed previous theft operations conducted across multiple states, targeting Native American sites, Spanish colonial ruins, and forgotten mining camps that contained historically significant artifacts worth millions on black markets. The criminal organization operated with corporate efficiency, employing specialists in archaeology, logistics security, and international shipping to move stolen cultural heritage through networks that avoided law enforcement detection through corruption, misdirection, and violence against potential witnesses. Dr. Blackwood's leadership role suggested education and connections that provided legitimate cover for criminal activities, while her access to armed security indicated resources and ruthlessness that made their current situation extremely dangerous for everyone involved. The theft of Templar artifacts specifically indicated connections to European criminal organizations specializing in medieval relics that commanded premium prices from private collectors obsessed with historical mysticism and secret society memorabilia. Connor realized they'd stumbled into something requiring federal intervention, rather than local law enforcement response. Given the international scope and sophisticated organization that suggested protection from high-level corruption or political connections. Samuel's academic expertise had been exploited to authenticate stolen artifacts and provide historical documentation that increased their market value, while his university credentials provided cover for criminal activities disguised as legitimate research expeditions. The professor's obvious remorse couldn't undo the damage caused by his cooperation with criminals who had no respect for cultural heritage or human life when protecting their profitable operations. Hunter remained vigilant despite the complex human emotions surrounding Samuel's betrayal. His military training focused on potential threats rather than moral judgments about human weaknesses that created dangerous situations. The chase through the castle's ancient corridors tested every survival skill Connor had learned during military service, while Hunter's combat experience provided tactical advantages that kept them ahead of armed pursuers familiar with the medieval fortress layout. Their escape route led through chambers containing centuries of accumulated debris, secret passages that connected different sections of the castle, and narrow staircases that limited the effectiveness of superior numbers pursuing them through unfamiliar territory. Hunter's keen senses provided early warning of ambush attempts, while his speed and agility allowed reconnaissance of escape routes that would be impossible for human travelers burdened with equipment and weapons. The German Shepherd's military training included building searches and tactical movement through confined spaces, skills that proved invaluable when navigating the castle's complex interior, while avoiding criminal organization members who had obvious advantages in terms of numbers, weapons, and familiarity with the facility layout. Connor's Rangers training emphasized improvised tactics and creative use of available resources, allowing him to create obstacles and misdirection that delayed pursuit while protecting their escape route from immediate closure by better armed opponents. The ancient castle's construction included defensive features that worked in their favor despite being designed centuries earlier, including murder holes, hidden passages, and structural weaknesses that could be exploited against modern pursuers unfamiliar with medieval military architecture. Professor Williams struggled to maintain their pace despite obvious terror about his situation, his academic lifestyle having provided little preparation for physical demands of escape and evasion under combat conditions. The criminal organization's response revealed extensive preparation for dealing with unwanted discovery, including communication systems that coordinated pursuit teams and equipment caches that suggested they'd anticipated exactly this type of security breach. Dr. Blackwood's voice echoed through stone corridors as she directed the search with professional competence, her criminal experience evident in tactical decisions that systematically eliminated escape options while maintaining pressure on their desperate flight through the fortress interior. Hunter's heroic intervention at a critical choke point allowed Connor and Samuel to reach relative safety, the German Shepherd's combat training and protective instincts creating the tactical advantage needed for their survival against overwhelming odds. Dr. Sophia Blackwood's escalation to hostage-taking marked the criminal operation's transformation from theft to kidnapping, federal crimes carrying life imprisonment sentences that demonstrated her desperation to protect the multimillion-dollar antiquities smuggling network from exposure. Emily Rodriguez became the primary bargaining chip when armed security personnel dragged her into the castle's main hall, her ranger uniform torn and bloodied from resisting capture during what should have been routine wilderness patrol duties. Connor watched from concealment as Emily was bound with professional restraints and positioned where any rescue attempt would expose her to immediate retaliation from criminals who had clearly prepared for exactly this type of law enforcement intervention. Dr. Blackwood's transformation from cultured academic to ruthless criminal mastermind revealed years of experience managing violent situations through intimidation and elimination of threats to her profitable operations across multiple states and international boundaries. Professor Samuel Williams stood beside Dr. Blackwood with obvious internal conflict, his academic conscience warring against self-preservation instincts that had initially drawn him into criminal collaboration through financial desperation and professional ambition. The professor's position within the criminal organization remained ambiguous. His value as authenticator and historical expert balanced against liability as potential witness who possessed detailed knowledge about their operations, personnel, and international connections. Connor realized that Samuel's survival depended on demonstrating continued loyalty to criminals who had no qualms about eliminating problems through violence when intimidation proved insufficient for maintaining operational security. Hunter remained hidden with Connor, the German Shepherd's military discipline, suppressing protective instincts that demanded immediate action to defend innocent civilians threatened by armed criminals operating in remote wilderness location where help seemed impossible to obtain through normal channels. Emily's ranger training included emergency protocols and survival techniques, but her current situation exceeded preparation for typical wilderness emergencies that didn't involve international criminal organizations with resources and motivation to commit murder for protecting their profitable operations. Connor and Hunter developed their rescue strategy using tactical principles learned during combat deployments, emphasizing surprise, superior positioning, and coordinated action that maximized their limited advantages against numerically superior and better armed opponents. The medieval castle's architecture provided defensive options that favored small unit tactics over conventional assault methods, with narrow passages, multiple levels, and ancient stonework that could conceal movement while limiting fields of fire for criminal organization members defending their position. Samuel Williams positioned himself as reluctant insider who could provide intelligence about guard rotations, weapon placements, and security protocols while maintaining cover as loyal collaborator until the optimal moment for revealing his true intentions. His academic background had never prepared him for tactical planning, but guilt over Emily's capture motivated cooperation with rescue efforts, despite obvious personal danger from discovery by criminals who would view betrayal as capital offense warranting immediate execution. Connor's Rangers training emphasized adaptability and improvisation when conventional resources were unavailable, skills that proved essential when planning assault on fortified position using only personal weapons, camping equipment, and Hunter's natural abilities against professional security team. The German Shepherd's combat experience included building searches, personnel detection, and tactical movement through confined spaces, capabilities that would prove crucial for successful infiltration of the castle's defensive perimeter without triggering alarms or alerting guards to their presence. Hunter's silent communication with Connor had been refined through dozens of dangerous missions overseas, allowing coordination without verbal commands that might compromise their tactical advantage during the critical phases of their rescue operation. The plan required precise timing and flawless execution, with contingencies for unexpected complications that could endanger Emily's life while exposing them to retaliation from desperate criminals cornered in remote location where elimination of witnesses represented their only hope for escaping justice. The confrontation in the castle's ancient dungeon created a tactical nightmare that tested every combat skill Connor had developed during military service, while pushing Hunter's protective instincts to their absolute limits. The underground chamber's stone walls and narrow passages amplified sound while limiting visibility, creating conditions that favored defenders familiar with the layout over rescuers operating in unfamiliar territory under extreme time pressure. Connor's approach required stealth movement through medieval corridors where centuries of accumulated debris created obstacles and potential noise hazards that could alert guards to their presence before reaching Emily's location in the dungeon cells. Hunter's reconnaissance abilities proved essential for avoiding armed patrols while gathering intelligence about guard positions, weapon placements, and security protocols that would determine the success or failure of their rescue attempt. The German Shepherd's silent communication methods allowed real-time tactical updates without verbal commands that might compromise their infiltration of the castle's defensive perimeter during the most critical phase of their operation. Dr. Blackwood had positioned herself in the dungeon's central chamber, where she could observe all approaches while maintaining direct control over Emily's fate through armed subordinates prepared to execute the hostage on her command. The criminal mastermind's tactical experience was evident in security arrangements that eliminated most rescue options while creating multiple fallback positions for her organization if their primary defenses were breached by law enforcement intervention. Connor's assault required coordination between multiple objectives: neutralizing armed guards, securing Emily's release, and preventing Dr. Blackwood's escape with evidence that could destroy their international smuggling network through systematic investigation by federal agencies. Professor Williams' role as insider remained precarious, his academic background providing little preparation for combat situations, while his guilt over Emily's capture motivated desperate actions that could endanger everyone involved if his deception was discovered prematurely. The dungeon's medieval design included features that could be exploited tactically, but also created hazards for rescuers unfamiliar with ancient architecture that had been modified over centuries to serve different purposes under various occupants. Hunter's heroic battle against the criminal organization's attack dogs represented the ultimate test of loyalty and combat training that had been forged through years of military service in hostile territory. The German Shepherd faced multiple opponents bred and trained specifically for violence, their handlers having prepared them for exactly this type of security breach through conditioning that emphasized aggression over discipline. Hunter's military background provided tactical advantages including superior training, combat experience, and protective motivation that transformed him from pet into lethal weapon, defending his human companions against overwhelming odds. The fight occurred in the castle's courtyard, where ancient stonework provided cover and obstacles that could be used tactically while limiting the effectiveness of superior numbers through terrain management and strategic positioning. Connor watched helplessly as Hunter engaged multiple attackers simultaneously. The German Shepherd's speed and intelligence allowing him to divide enemy forces while avoiding encirclement that would have proven fatal against better coordinated opponents. The attack dog's aggression was impressive but undisciplined compared to Hunter's military precision, their training emphasizing intimidation and raw violence over tactical thinking and coordinated action that characterized professional military working dogs. Hunter's protective instincts had been refined through combat deployments, where split-second decisions meant the difference between survival and death for his human teammates, experience that proved essential when facing multiple threats simultaneously under extreme pressure. Dr. Blackwood watched the battle with obvious concern, her criminal experience recognizing that Hunter's success represented tactical defeat for her security arrangements, while demonstrating capabilities that exceeded her organization's preparation for this type of resistance. The attack dog's defeat eliminated a crucial component of the castle's defensive system, while providing psychological victory that boosted morale for the rescue operation during its most critical phase. Connor's pride in Hunter's performance was tempered by concern for injuries that might compromise the German Shepherd's ability to continue their mission against criminals who would show no mercy to wounded opponents, threatening their profitable operations. The discovery of the secret treasure chamber beneath the castle's foundation revealed the true scope of the criminal organization's operations, while providing evidence that could destroy their international smuggling network through systematic prosecution by federal agencies. The hidden room contained artifacts spanning multiple historical periods and geographical regions, indicating theft operations that had been conducted across several states over multiple years with systematic efficiency that suggested corporate-level organization and resources. Medieval weapons, religious relics, Native American artifacts, and Spanish colonial treasures filled climate-controlled storage units that maintained optimal preservation conditions while preparing stolen cultural heritage for shipment to wealthy private collectors worldwide. The chamber's sophisticated security systems included motion sensors, temperature controls, and communication equipment that connected the Utah operation to criminal networks extending across international boundaries through corruption, misdirection, and violence against potential witnesses. Connor's military experience recognized logistics capabilities that required substantial financial backing and political protection, suggesting connections to organized crime syndicates or corrupt government officials who profited from cultural heritage theft, while avoiding prosecution through systemic corruption. Documentation found in the treasure chamber revealed previous operations conducted against archaeological sites in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Nevada, with stolen artifacts worth millions being sold through auction houses and private dealers who asked no questions about provenance or legal ownership. Dr. Blackwood's role as operation leader was confirmed by financial records, showing her authority over budgets exceeding $10 million annually. Resources that explained the sophisticated equipment, professional security, and international reach that characterized their criminal enterprise. Professor Williams' authentication services had been crucial for establishing market value and historical significance that determined pricing for stolen artifacts offered with collectors of cultural heritage regardless of legal or ethical considerations. The treasure chamber's contents represented cultural crimes of unprecedented scope, requiring federal intervention and international cooperation to recover stolen artifacts, while prosecuting criminal organization members who had violated multiple laws governing cultural heritage protection. Hunter's alert behavior in the chamber suggested additional threats or hidden dangers that his sensitive detection abilities had identified beyond the obvious criminal activity they already discovered through their infiltration of the castle's operations. Emily Rodriguez's shocking betrayal struck Connor with the force of physical violence, shattering assumptions about ally and enemy while creating immediate tactical crisis that threatened everyone's survival in the remote wilderness location. Her ranger uniform and professional credentials had provided perfect cover for criminal infiltration of law enforcement agencies responsible for protecting the very cultural heritage she'd been helping to steal through systematic deception and abuse of public trust. Emily's weapon training and wilderness expertise made her extremely dangerous when revealed as enemy agent rather than victim requiring rescue. Her knowledge of Connor's capabilities and tactical preferences providing significant advantage for the criminal organization's security operations. The false rangers' positioning during their conversations had been calculated to gather intelligence about potential threats while maintaining cover story that had successfully deceived Connor's military-trained threat assessment and situational awareness. Her shooting of Connor represented escalation to attempted murder, federal crimes that demonstrated the criminal organization's willingness to eliminate witnesses, regardless of law enforcement credentials or public safety concerns that should have protected civilian hikers from violent retaliation. The bullet wound to Connor's shoulder created immediate tactical disadvantage while limiting his combat effectiveness during the most critical phase of their confrontation, with armed criminals operating in fortified position with superior numbers and resources. Professor Williams' horror at the violence was genuine, despite his previous cooperation with the criminal organization, his academic background having provided no preparation for witnessing attempted murder committed by people he'd considered colleagues, rather than dangerous criminals. Emily's insider knowledge of Park Service operations had probably facilitated the criminal organization's activities for months or years, providing advance warning of law enforcement activities, while misdirecting investigations away from their Utah operations. Her betrayal explained the sophisticated intelligence that had allowed the antiquities theft ring to operate with impunity despite the scale and visibility of their activities in supposedly protected wilderness areas. The fire that erupted throughout the ancient castle created chaos that threatened everyone's survival while providing unexpected tactical opportunities for escape from criminal organization members who found their defensive advantages eliminated by natural disaster. Emily's sabotage of electrical systems had been intended to destroy evidence of criminal activities, while creating confusion that would facilitate her organization's escape, with stolen artifacts and elimination of witnesses who threatened their profitable operations. The flames spread rapidly through medieval stonework and wooden structures that had been modified over centuries with modern materials that burned more intensely than original construction would have permitted under normal circumstances. Connor's bullet wound limited his mobility, while smoke inhalation threatened to incapacitate him completely unless immediate evacuation could be achieved through routes that remained passable despite rapidly changing fire conditions throughout the castle interior. Hunter's protective instincts drove him to remain close to Connor, despite obvious personal danger from smoke and flames that created hazardous conditions for anyone attempting movement through the burning fortress. Professor Williams found courage born of desperation when faced with immediate threat of death by fire, his academic lifestyle having provided no preparation for survival under extreme conditions that tested physical and mental endurance beyond normal human limits. Dr. Blackwood's criminal organization faced tactical disaster as their defensive positions became death traps, forcing evacuation that exposed them to capture while abandoning evidence that could destroy their international smuggling network through systematic prosecution by federal agencies. The fire's intensity exceeded capabilities of available firefighting equipment, while remote location made professional emergency response impossible within timeframes needed for effective intervention to save lives or preserve evidence of criminal activities. Smoke inhalation posed immediate threat to everyone trapped within the castle walls, creating medical emergencies that required immediate treatment unavailable in wilderness location hours away from hospital facilities, equipped to handle severe burn injuries and respiratory trauma. The ancient castle's layout became a maze of death traps as fire spread through passages and chambers where escape routes were eliminated by structural collapse and toxic smoke that made navigation impossible. Specialized breathing equivalent development to anyone caught within the burning fortress. Hunter's heroic leadership during their desperate escape through the castle's ancient tunnel system demonstrated intelligence and courage that exceeded normal animal capabilities while saving human lives through decisive action under extreme pressure. The German Shepherd's exploration of the burning castle had revealed hidden passages that connected the fortress to natural cave systems extending deep into the Utah mountain landscape, routes that remained passable despite the fire raging above ground. His ability to navigate complex underground terrain while guiding injured humans through darkness and smoke required spatial memory and problem-solving skills that bordered on supernatural, combined with protective motivation that drove him to risk his own life repeatedly for others' survival. The tunnel system had been carved centuries earlier as escape route for the castle's original inhabitants, medieval engineering that proved essential for modern survival when contemporary exits became blocked by fire and structural collapse. Hunter's sensitive nose guided their movement through passages where human senses would have been completely inadequate for navigation. His ability to detect fresh air currents indicating safe routes towards surface exits located miles from the burning fortress. Connor struggled to maintain consciousness while following Hunter's lead through underground maze that would have been impossible to navigate without the German Shepherd's guidance and determination to reach safety despite obvious personal danger from smoke inhalation and potential cave-ins. Professor Williams found physical strength he didn't know he possessed when motivated by immediate threat of death, his academic lifestyle having provided no preparation for crawling through narrow tunnels while breathing toxic air that threatened respiratory failure. Hunter even managed to guide Samuel Williams to safety despite the professor's earlier betrayal. The German Shepherd's protective instincts extending to all humans under his care regardless of personal feelings about their previous actions or moral failures. The underground journey required hours of difficult movement through passages that tested endurance and determination while smoke from the burning castle above ground created hazardous breathing conditions throughout the tunnel network. Hunter's navigation eventually led them to cave entrance concealed in forest, several miles from the castle, location that provided safety from fire while positioning them for eventual rescue by emergency personnel responding to reports of the massive blaze visible across the mountain landscape. The final confrontation on Utah's treacherous mountain cliffs created life or death situation that tested every survival skill Connor and Hunter had developed through years of the military service in hostile territory around the world. Dr. Blackwood's escape attempt had led her organization to defensive position on narrow ledges, where ancient geological formations provided temporary refuge from pursuing law enforcement, while creating extreme hazards for anyone attempting capture or rescue operations. The criminal mastermind's desperation was evident in tactical decisions that prioritized short-term survival over long-term strategy, her experience with violent situations having provided no preparation for pursuit across terrain that demanded specialized mountaineering skills unavailable to her urban criminal background. Connor's Rangers' training included high-altitude operations and technical climbing capabilities that proved essential when pursuing fleeing criminals across rock formations that would have been impassable for personnel without military mountaineering experience and specialized equipment. Hunter's natural agility and fearless determination allowed him to navigate cliff faces that would challenge experienced human climbers, his four-legged stability and lower center of gravity providing advantages that became crucial during the most dangerous phases of their pursuit. Emily Rodriguez's betrayal had been revealed too late to prevent her escape with Dr. Blackwood, but her wilderness expertise created additional tactical challenges for law enforcement personnel attempting capture in terrain that favored defenders familiar with local geography and climbing routes. The mountain chase required split-second decisions about route selection and risk assessment, while maintaining pursuit pressure that prevented criminals from establishing defensive positions or coordinating counterattacks against their pursuers. Wind conditions at high altitude created additional hazards for everyone involved in the confrontation, with gusts that could easily cause fatal falls from exposed positions where safety equipment was inadequate for the extreme conditions encountered during their desperate flight. Connor's bullet wound from Emily's attack continued bleeding despite field dressing, creating medical emergency that threatened his ability to maintain pursuit while limiting physical capabilities needed for technical climbing across increasingly difficult terrain. Hunter's protective instincts drove him to remain close to Connor despite obvious personal danger, the German Shepherd's loyalty overriding survival instincts when his human companion faced immediate threat of death from criminal attack or accidental fall from extreme altitude. Hunter's final heroic act of saving Connor's life from certain death demonstrated the ultimate expression of loyalty and courage that had been forged through years of shared danger and mutual dependence in military service overseas. Connor's attempt to apprehend Dr. Blackwood on the narrow mountain ledge had resulted in tactical disaster when loose rock gave way beneath his feet, sending him plummeting towards certain death on jagged stones hundreds of feet below the cliff face. Hunter's immediate response required split-second decision-making and physical capabilities that exceeded normal animal limitations, the German Shepherd launching himself from secure position to intercept Connor's fall through coordinated action that demonstrated intelligence and courage beyond typical pet behavior. The rescue required perfect timing and incredible strength as Hunter managed to grab Connor's equipment harness with his teeth while bracing against rocky outcropping that provided just enough leverage to arrest their combined momentum before fatal impact with the ground far below. Connor's survival depended entirely on Hunter's willingness to risk his own life for his human companion, the German Shepherd's protective instincts overriding self-preservation in favor of loyalty that had been tested and proven through countless dangerous situations during their military partnership. Dr. Blackwood watched the rescue with obvious amazement, her criminal experience having provided no preparation for witnessing animal heroism that exceeded human capabilities for selfless action under extreme pressure and personal danger. The successful rescue created tactical opportunity that allowed law enforcement personnel to complete capture operations against criminal organization members who had been cornered on the mountain cliffs without viable escape routes remaining available to them. Connor's gratitude toward Hunter was overwhelming and immediate, his military experience recognizing that his survival had depended entirely on the German Shepherd's extraordinary courage and loyalty that represented the highest ideals of partnership with humans and animals in dangerous situations. Emily Rodriguez and Dr. Blackwood's capture marked the end of their international antiquities smuggling operation, while providing evidence needed for federal prosecution of criminal network that had operated across multiple states for several years. The arrival of Agent Lucas Thompson and his FBI tactical team represented the culmination of months of federal investigation into international antiquities, smuggling networks that had been concordant with Professor Samuel Williams' cooperation as confidential informant. The massive law enforcement response included personnel from multiple agencies specializing in cultural crimes, organized crime prosecution, and international criminal networks that had been systematically stealing American cultural heritage for sale to wealthy private collectors worldwide. Agent Thompson explained that Samuel's initial contact with federal authorities had occurred weeks before their Utah expedition, his academic conscience finally overriding financial desperation when he realized the true scope of criminal activities he'd been supporting through authentication services and historical expertise. The professor's cooperation with federal investigators had been carefully concealed from Dr. Blackwood's organization while providing crucial intelligence about their operations, personnel, and international connections that enabled law enforcement to build comprehensive case for prosecution under multiple federal statutes. Samuel's insertion of tracking devices and communication equipment had allowed real-time monitoring of the criminal organization's activities, while providing backup support that proved essential when the situation escalated to kidnapping and attempted murder in remote wilderness location. The FBI's tactical response demonstrated sophisticated coordination between multiple agencies including Park Service law enforcement, international crime task forces, and specialized units trained for operations in difficult terrain that required both law enforcement and wilderness rescue capabilities. Agent Thompson's team included experts in cultural heritage crimes who could properly document and preserve recovered artifacts, while maintaining chain of custody needed for successful criminal organization members. Criminal organizations multiple federal charges carrying severe prison sentences. The international scope of the antiquities smuggling network required cooperation with foreign law enforcement agencies and cultural heritage organizations working to recover stolen artifacts and prosecute criminal networks operating across through national corruption and violence. Dr. Blackwood and Emily Rodriguez faced charges including kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy violation of federal antiquities laws, and participation in international criminal organization that carried potential life imprisonment sentences, reflecting the serious nature of their cultural heritage crimes. The successful conclusion of the federal investigation vindicated Samuel Williams' decision to cooperate with law enforcement despite personal risks, his academic expertise proving crucial for understanding and prosecuting cultural crimes that threatened American historical heritage through systematic theft and destruction. Agent Thompson's comprehensive briefing revealed the extraordinary scope of the federal investigation that had been building for over 2 years, targeting international criminal networks, specializing in American cultural heritage theft through systematic operations across multiple Western states. The FBI's Cultural Property Crime Team had been tracking Dr. Sophia Blackwood's organization since their first detected activities in Arizona, where similar medieval artifacts had disappeared from legitimate archaeological sites under mysterious circumstances that suggested professional theft rather than amateur treasure hunting. Samuel Williams' recruitment as confidential informant had occurred during routine academic background checks that revealed his financial vulnerabilities and increasing involvement with questionable antiquities dealers with no questions about artifact provenance or legal ownership status. The professor's cooperation had been motivated by genuine remorse about his participation in cultural heritage destruction, combined with federal prosecutors' willingness to offer reduced charges in exchange for sustained cooperation that could dismantle the entire criminal network through systematic evidence gathering and insider intelligence. Agent Thompson claimed that Sell's academic credentials and established relationship with the criminal organization had provided perfect cover for federal surveillance operations that documented criminal activities while building comprehensive case for prosecution under multiple federal statutes. The tracking devices and communication equipment Samuel had carried during their Utah expedition had enabled real-time monitoring by federal tactical teams positioned throughout the mountain region, ready to intervene when criminal activities escalated to violence against civilian witnesses. Connor's military background and Hunter's exceptional capabilities had exceeded federal expectations for civilian involvement, their survival and evidence gathering proving crucial for successful prosecution of criminal organization members who might otherwise have escaped justice through elimination of witnesses and destruction of evidence. The historical significance of the Utah Castle discovery promised to revolutionize understanding of European influence in American Western development during periods traditionally considered dominated by indigenous cultures and later American expansion westward. Archaeological analysis conducted by legitimate researchers revealed construction techniques and architectural features consistent with medieval European methods, suggesting direct transplantation of Old World building traditions to New World locations through immigration patterns previously unknown to historical scholarship. The castle's foundation contained artifacts spanning multiple centuries, indicating continuous occupation by groups maintaining European cultural practices, while adapting to American wilderness conditions that required significant modifications to traditional lifestyle patterns. Carbon dating of structural materials confirmed construction during the late 1800s, coinciding with religious and social movements that brought European immigrants to remote American locations where they could practice traditional beliefs without interference from mainstream society or government regulation of religious activities. The treasure chamber's contents included religious artifacts, historical documents, and cultural objects that provided unprecedented insight into secret societies and religious groups who had established hidden communities throughout the American West during periods of social upheaval and religious persecution. Professor Williams' academic expertise would prove essential for proper interpretation and preservation of cultural materials that represented invaluable contributions to understanding American immigration patterns, religious diversity, and cultural preservation efforts by marginalized communities seeking refuge in wilderness locations. The site's transformation into legitimate archaeological research facility would require extensive federal funding and international cooperation to ensure proper preservation and study of cultural heritage that had criminal exploitation for public education and historical understation, profit rather than threatened understanding. University partnerships with federal agencies would facilitate scholarly research while maintaining security protocols needed to protect the site from future criminal activity or unauthorized treasure hunters seeking by personal enrichment through cultural heritage destruction. Agent Thompson emphasized that the castle's historical significance extended far beyond monetary value of individual artifacts, representing irreplaceable window into American cultural development that could never be recovered if destroyed by criminal negligence or commercial exploitation through illegal antiquities markets. Connor Matthews' recognition as civilian hero reflected federal appreciation for extraordinary courage and tactical skill that had prevented destruction of irreplaceable cultural heritage, while exposing international criminal networks operate with impunity across American wilderness areas. The Department of Defense issued commendation acknowledging his military service and subsequent civilian actions that upheld the highest traditions of American veterans committed to protecting national interests, even after completing active duty obligations to their country. Congressional representatives from Utah praised Connor's dedication to cultural preservation and law enforcement cooperation, recognizing that his actions had saved artifacts worth millions while exposing criminal networks that had been operating undetected for years across multiple states. The financial reward provided by federal agencies addressed Connor's immediate need to save his family ranch, while recognizing the personal sacrifices and physical injuries he'd sustained during the investigation that led to successful prosecution of international criminal organization. Hunter's heroic actions received unprecedented recognition from military working dog veteran, including formal commendation from the Army Rangers and honorary membership in veteran service organizations that typically reserved recognition for human personnel rather than animal partners. National media coverage of their story inspired widespread public support for veteran programs and military working dog welfare, generating donations and volunteer support that would benefit countless other veterans struggling with civilian transition challenges, similar to those Connor had faced before the Utah expedition. The partnership between Connor and Hunter became symbol of loyalty, courage, and service that resonated with audiences seeking positive examples of American values during periods of social division and political uncertainty about national direction and priorities. Speaking engagements and educational programs featuring their story would provide ongoing income while promoting awareness of veteran issues and cultural heritage protection that aligned with Connor's personal values and professional background in military service. Agent Thompson arranged media interviews and public appearances that emphasize the importance of civilian cooperation with law enforcement while highlighting the critical role of cultural heritage protection in maintaining American historical identity and educational resources, FUSAVs, for future generations. The permanent preservation of the Utah Castle site represented victory for cultural heritage protection advocates who had long argued for stronger federal enforcement against antiquities that threatened American archaeological resources through commercial exploitation. The establishment of the first Templar Heritage Museum in North America would provide educational opportunities while protecting artifacts from future criminal activity through professional security measures and scholarly oversight that ensured proper preservation and public access. International cooperation with European heritage organizations facilitated research exchanges and artifact loans that enhanced understanding of transatlantic cultural connections during periods of American Western expansion that had been inadequately documented through traditional historical sources. The museum's educational programs would serve schools, universities, and tourist groups seeking authentic historical experiences, rather than commercial entertainment that often distorted or trivialized cultural heritage for mass-market consumption. Federal funding for ongoing archaeological research at the site would support graduate student training and professional development while maintaining security protocols that prevented unauthorized access by treasure hunters or criminal organizations seeking to exploit the cultural resources for private profit. Professor Samuel Williams' rehabilitation through community service and scholarly research provided positive example of redemption and second chances for individuals who had made mistakes but demonstrated genuine commitment to making amends through constructive contributions to society. The site's protection under federal antiquities laws ensured permanent preservation, while establishing legal precedents that would strengthen prosecution of cultural heritage crimes throughout the American West, where remote locations had traditionally provided cover for criminal activities. Connor's ongoing involvement as site consultant and security advisor utilized his military expertise while providing steady employment that allowed him to maintain his family ranch and support hunters' veterinary care throughout their retirement years. The Utah discovery inspired increased federal funding for cultural heritage protection programs and law enforcement training that would prevent future criminal exploitation of American archaeological resources through better detection, investigation, and prosecution capabilities. Hunter's recognition as honorary park ranger provided appropriate acknowledgement of his heroic service while establishing precedent for honoring military working dogs who continued serving their communities after completing active duty obligations with their human partners. The enduring bond between Connor and Hunter represents the ultimate expression of loyalty that transcends species barriers through shared experience, mutual trust, and unwavering commitment to protecting each other regardless of personal cost or danger. Their partnership demonstrates that true heroism emerges not from individual achievement but from collaborative effort, where each member contributes unique capabilities toward common goals that serve broader community interests, rather than purely personal advancement. The veteran and his faithful companion proved that military training and values continue serving society long after formal service obligations end, creating positive impact through civilian applications of professional expertise developed during years of dedicated service to their country. Their story illustrates the transformative power of purpose and partnership when individuals choose to use their capabilities for protecting cultural heritage, supporting law enforcement, and serving community needs that extend beyond immediate personal interests or financial considerations. Connor's military experience combined with Hunter's exceptional intelligence and loyalty created force multiplication that enabled them to accomplish objectives that would have been impossible for either individual acting alone against better equipped and numerically superior criminal opposition. The German Shepherd's heroic actions throughout their adventure exemplified the highest ideals of military working dog partnerships, where animal courage and human leadership combine to achieve extraordinary results under extreme pressure and person limits of training or the natural ability that tests the natural ability. We'd love to hear about your own experiences with loyal companions who've made a difference in your life. Share your stories in the comments below about the dogs, cats, or other animal friends who've shown extraordinary courage or loyalty when you needed them most. Your experiences help build a community of people who understand the special bond between humans and animals that goes beyond ordinary pet ownership. If you enjoyed this story of Connor and Hunter's incredible adventure, please subscribe to our channel to make sure you don't miss future stories about the amazing partnerships between veterans and their animal companions. We share new stories every week featuring real heroes whose courage and loyalty inspire us all to be better people and better friends to the animals in our lives. Click on the video appearing on your screen now to discover another incredible story about a veteran whose life was transformed by an unexpected animal partnership that tested the bonds of loyalty and courage in ways that will surprise and inspire you. These stories remind us that heroism comes in many forms, and that the most important battles are often fought not on distant battlefields, but in our own communities, where ordinary people and their animal companions make extraordinary differences through courage, loyalty, and love. We honor all veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice, and we celebrate the animals who serve alongside them with equal dedication and courage.